Welcome to the Further Light Podcast, presented by Wisconsin Freemasonry, helping you accomplish your Masonic goals through education and more light. And now, I present to you, Brother Chris Ludke.
Listeners, scholars, brothers, this is Brother Chris Ludke, and today I want to start our summer short series. So as last year, we're going to do some shorter episodes over the summer. Many of these episodes are drawn from material that was created by the Wisconsin Education Committee throughout the year for other purposes. And we're trying to keep it short because, well, everyone's busy in the summer. You're running around, you have vacations and everything else. But we want the education to continue. Today, I'm going to be looking at a piece of education written for the Masonic Journal by Worshipful Brother Pat Cholka. And this one is on the forgotten virtue. Getting into the article. When you say the word virtue to a Freemason, his mind automatically goes to the cardinal virtues of temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. Occasionally, he may also think of the theological virtues of faith, hope, and love, which in our ritual we call charity. In this article, I am going to focus on one virtue that is not specifically referenced in our ritual, but is so much at the heart of its lessons that it could be considered one of the general themes of Masonry itself. First things first, a definition. The Cambridge Dictionary defines a virtue as, quote, a good moral quality in a person or a general quality of being morally good. Further to that, the Cambridge Dictionary defines a moral as, quote, relating to the standards of good or bad behavior, fairness, honesty, etc., that each person believes in rather than to the laws. It is reasonable then to infer that a virtue is a quality that, when practiced, enables us to conform to the standards of good behavior. So what is this virtue that I refer to as being forgotten? Of the many virtues we recognize, take things like courage, humility, and integrity. In addition to the ones I mentioned earlier, an essential virtue that is all but forgotten is balance. Balance is an essential virtue, and in the Western world is omitted from most lists I have found. In the East, particularly China, balance has always held a central place in human thought. It is symbolized best by the yin-yang symbol we know so well, but seldom consider. Balance is not the same as moderation. Moderation means to avoid extremes or excess. Balance, on the other hand, is about finding the equilibrium, understanding that the positive cannot exist without the negative, and using that understanding to establish boundaries. In Freemasonry, moderation is temperance, while balance is equality. The yin-yang consists of black and white in balance. It demonstrates that they're opposites, which are connected despite their opposition of each other. It is a fundamental fact of nature. The good cannot exist without the bad, the positive without the negative. Balance, it seems to me, lies at the heart of the physical, spiritual, and political health. And I think that reclaiming this virtue lies at the heart of understanding how to interact with each other. Balance is not mentioned specifically anywhere in the ritual, but it doesn't make it any less important to the life of a Mason. There are so many inferences to this virtue in our ritual that I consider it an underlying theme throughout, perhaps more so in the Entered Apprentice. Perhaps the most obvious inference to balance in our ritual is the mosaic pavement, that representation of the ground floor of King Solomon's temple being checkered with black and white. Makes us think of the yin and yang I mentioned earlier. In fact, the representation of good and evil found in the mosaic pavement being mentioned among the ornaments of a lodge, along with the blessings and comforts that surround us by way of the indented tessel, under the guidance of divine providence, is a beautiful example of using boundaries to establish that balance. If we consider the blessing and comforts that surround us as the boundaries and divine providence as our guide, we can make our way through the mosaic pavement with little more than the occasional temptation. Another inference to balance can be found in the lesson of the level. The level clearly teaches Masons we are all equal in the eyes of Freemasonry. It reminds us that we all must be held to the same standard, regardless of what we have accomplished inside or outside of the fraternity. That equality, however, cannot be achieved without balance. As in operative masonry, the level can only sit straight if it's placed on a solid foundation, one that is straight, true, and balanced. To be on the level, then, as Freemasons, it stands to reason that we first must strike that balance between the differences that necessarily exist between each of us and make us unique. The level, in this context, is closely related to the cardinal virtue of justice, which is illustrated by a scale or balance, and it is not a coincidence, in my opinion, that the level is listed by some sources as a synonym to balance. The 24-inch gauge is another Masonic symbol that seems to require balance to be able to use it effectively. The lesson of the 24-inch gauge is to divide our time among our duties to those who have placed requirements upon us. Though this specific lesson talks about equal division of our time in 8-hour increments, it is not always possible to maintain that exactly. For example, if through the course of your vocation, you must put in a 9-hour day to meet a deadline, one of the other aspects must necessarily suffer. However, if you strive to maintain balance while exercising this working tool over time, you will find that you are able to fulfill those duties completely. The last symbol I would like to highlight here regarding its allusion to balance is the compass. In geometry, it is used for drawing perfect circles and arcs. In speculative masonry, the compass enables us to draw a boundary around our desires and works with moderation so that we may live in a balanced life. I hope I was able to illustrate to you how balance, while not specifically referenced in our ritual, is an important virtue to a Freemason. References to the need to lead a balanced life permeates Freemasonry. And it's really not that surprising that it does. At the end of the day, during the Enlightenment, there would have been a lot of things affecting this newly forming fraternity, including the Industrial Revolution, which encouraged people at times to work 16-hour days, 6 days a week, and an 8-hour day on Sunday, at least early on. Balance would have been one of those incredibly important lessons that needed to be taught. One of those lessons that is very difficult to inculcate in and of itself, because balance can mean so many things to so many different people. But when it's placed within the working tools, what we're doing is we're providing context for balance. You need balance here in terms of time. We need balance in terms of thought, the common gavel. We need balance in terms of how we look at other people, the level, or balance in terms of moral rectitude, the plumb. And so it becomes this underlying rule of reminding us that we need to have balance in our personal lives, in our faith, in the way that we handle other people, and becomes an overarching theme for a reason. Thank you for joining me, Brother Chris Lidke, and the entire Further Light team on your quest to find more light through Masonry.
Are you interested in learning more about Freemasonry in Wisconsin? Visit wisconsinmasons.org to learn more about Masonry and access further educational content and more light. Once again, that address is wimasons.org. Any questions, comments, or suggestions, please email us at education@wisconsinmasons.org. And thank you for listening.